I'm John Galante, and nearly 8 years ago, I began a journey that has since allowed me to collaborate with hundreds of clients globally, deeply influencing not only my life, but those of my family and business partners. Being from Brazil with very limited resources, it was only through free YouTube content that I was able to do that. I'm now giving back on the same platform, offering complete, comprehensive, and high quality courses entirely for free. To me, education is a beacon of hope, a tool for empowerment, and a gateway to opportunities. It is my vision and hope that this content allows you to uplift your life through honest, ethical, and exceptional work. Although this channel operates independently from my corporate endeavors, I understand that some of you will be interested in our services. For those, contact links to our Brazilian and US representatives will be in the description. Okay, so the first step after talking with the client, after the initial calls with the client, is what I like to call an educated brain dump. What do I mean by educated? You're going to be jotting down and taking notes. I usually do this in pen and paper. I'm now usually using electronic devices. I hope that my handwriting is not as bad as I believe it will be. But anyway, you have objectives in mind. And at least in here, we have three main questions that we want to answer. The first question is, what's the product goal? So how it's going to benefit the company? What are you actually being paid to do? It's another way to answer that. The second one is, who's going to be serviced by this product that you are creating? Sometimes the same person or the same entity, the same company that's paying you is going to be the company that are going to be the people who are going to be using the system. A lot of times, especially when it comes to chatbots, these are not the same entities. And the third part is just, what are the needs? And when it comes to needs, you have to think about the needs from both entities, the company that's paying you and the people who are going to be serviced by the system. Again, those can be the same entity, but a lot of times they're not. So think about that. If I'm developing something for a doctor, so it's a AI secretary, who's going to be talking to this AI secretary? Who's going to be serviced by it? It's most likely not your client. It's not most likely not the doctor himself or herself. It's going to be people who are interested in their services. So it's important that you have that in mind so you can answer and develop something that has both the needs of the client, which it's very similar to the product objective, and also the needs of the people who are going to be serviced by the system or the product itself. So let's start off by giving you some context and jotting down everything that we can in order to answer these specific points. Okay, starting with the context. Who is the client? As I said, this is a real paying client. What you're seeing is the development of a real project. So the client is an advertising agency, so ad agency. They mostly work with surgeons. They run ads leading to a landing page. So ads, landing page. From there, in this landing page, there is a form where they grab the information. So form, and the prospect might or might not schedule a Calendly call. It's not a Calendly call, it's a video call, but you get the idea. They do that through Calendly. And for this client, we're going to be developing an AI system that works like a SDR. For those who don't know, that's a sales development representative. Right, and in order to answer those questions, the best thing that you can do is to really draw and map out the whole system. Okay, so let's go step by step. The first thing is they have an ad on IG and Facebook. This ad leads people to their landing page. On their landing page, there is a form. This form is from HubSpot, and they take that information and they bring it to Trello, which they use as a CRM. And this information that they have up to now is the name of the prospect, their phone number, and their email. And of course, on the Trello board, they have all the different columns and so forth. And they get sent to this very first column in here, column number 1, which is, I think, like signed up or something like that. Now, once they fill this form, two things can happen. So the first one is, it's on the thank you page, there is a Calendly like widget. So let me try to draw a calendar in here. Let's say that's a calendar. And first option is just, of course, they just close the browser, just say close interaction, and they go about their day. This one, of course, is not the ideal path, that would be, of course, if they schedule a sales call. It's actually called a discovery call, but anyway, just I know a lot of people call it a discovery too, but let's be honest, it's a sales call. And now let's go about what happens after they reach this point. So if they do schedule a sales call, they get a WhatsApp message, which is just a confirmation. All right, that's to make sure that they are aware that they schedule a call, and to just reconfirm that they will be on the call. For those of you who don't know, not nearly everybody that schedules a call actually participates on a call. Of course, this confirmation can go one of two ways. They can, let me just say, accept it, or they can deny it. So they say that they aren't actually able to participate on it. If they accept it, then they need to be notified. So if they deny it, it should acknowledge it and also notify them. But not only that, it should also send them another schedule link. So send new link. So this is the first scenario where everything up to this point in here was like ideal. So they went to the landing page, they filled the form, their info got sent to both HubSpot and then to Trello. They went to their CRM, they got to the thank you page, they scheduled the call, and then they got the confirmation, and so on and so forth. Now we have the second situation, the less ideal situation, if I may call it that way, which is, let me scroll down a little bit. So, no scheduled call. What happens is a WhatsApp message is sent to confirm that they subscribed. So I'm actually writing subscription brackets in here because it's not really a subscription, but you got the point. And I'm just going to write simply, try to get them to schedule. Try to get them to schedule, which could be translated to they're going to have objections and we need to understand them. So understand objections and, of course, overcome them. If that's successful, well, they're pretty much going to be ending up in here. And if we can't overcome this, no success. First, oh, I forgot. We need to capture these objections. I'm going to write DB in here. That just stands for database, which most likely is going to translate to spreadsheet in this one. But if there's no success, again, we're going to acknowledge it. I can't really remember now. I don't have the notes like easy. Yeah, they're not there. If we need to notify them or not, but I'm just going to say notify. And that's it. End. Okay. So this is what it looks like in the end. Of course, this part up here is just the context. The actual system is in here. Now, I want you guys to realize that even though this seems, and this is pretty sloppy, this gives us clarity to answer those questions. So I don't know if I'm going to write in here, but the first one, remember, it was, what are the product goals? So let us try to just circle in here the key parts. So up to here, we're not doing much. This is one of the parts that we're actually being hired to take care of. And this is the other part. So the system should, if they schedule a call on Calendly, confirm that they're going to be on that call. If they accept it and they confirm it, we just need to notify the closer and the sales team, whatever. If they deny it, we need to acknowledge that. Probably I'm going to add some details in here, like grab the answer that they gave when they denied it. But anyway, and also notify the team and send the prospect a new link. Now, on the second scenario, where they didn't schedule, we need to first acknowledge and confirm that they actually subscribed. This is just to create some rapport, not to go out there and just blatantly say, hey, can you schedule another call? After we do this, we have to try to make them schedule. And this, in my opinion, is I'm not going to say the trickiest part, but is the bulk of the work is going to be in here. to program the AI to be able, in order for it to be able to do this. I was going to try to understand the objections. It's going to try to overcome these objections. If it can overcome them, pretty much the same thing that we have in here is going to send the Calendly link, and then we're back to this place in here. If it can't, we have to acknowledge that, notify the team, and that's pretty much where it ends. So these are the product goals. Now, who's going to be serviced by this system? Well, in this case, we actually have multiple entities. Try to, okay. We first have this option where people who are going to be serviced are, so prospects that scheduled a discovery. And the second one, or I wrote people, it should be prospects, but anyway, people who fill out the form but didn't schedule the call. These are the two main entities, or the two main types of people that are going to be using this system. And now let's briefly go through the needs of the entities that are involved in this whole system. First of all, we have the company, so the ad agency itself. Let me highlight that in green. Actually, it can't be green because green is already the color that we used. So let's try it light gray. So it needs to send this confirmation. So it needs to confirm in here. It needs to notify them here and here. Well, first of all, I should say it needs to understand, right, and separate people from. I'm thinking a little bit forward already, because I'm already thinking about how the system is going to have to be set up. But the first stage is actually that the system needs to have is to be able to differentiate people who have scheduled a call from people who didn't. So let me just do this. So differentiate, just put a symbol like this. So in here, it needs to send, so another confirmation. It needs to, of course, try to get them to schedule. It needs to capture these objections in a database that's important. And if not, of course, notify and acknowledge. Now, even though the client or the customer's needs, that means that the people who are going to be serviced by the system are a little bit more in-depth. You usually deal with them as you're creating the system. At least that's how we do it in here. It's important that we are able to at least recognize them from the get-go, so we know if there's any trickier parts of it. I can't see any tricky part in here, because from the client, they just need to, well, they need, of course, to be able to accept or deny it. So accept or deny. They need to be sent a new link. They need to be acknowledged. In here, I'm just going to paint this because I'm considering that if they feel like their objections were overcome, I don't know if that's the right English word, but anyway, they need to be sent the link. So that's a need from the client as well. And I'm going to stop it in here, because what we're going to do now is slice this into different sections so we can work with each one of them separately and in order. So the first one is actually going to be this one right here. Once they get to the thank you page, because so far, I want you to understand this, like in here, there isn't anything that's within the scope of the project. Scope is a very important word. But in here, we have the first part where we actually need to act. And that is, let me scroll down a little bit. Once they get to the sales page, to the thank you page, we need to identify what happens now, because this is the start of the project. This is the start of the scope of the project, if I can say that. But this can actually be broken down into sub-projects. Okay. So I'll start off by if they scheduled a call through Calendly. Now here's where the more technical line of thought starts. If I'm saying that a scheduled call starts is the trigger that starts a part of the project, part of the automation, I first need to understand if the person has or has not scheduled for a calendar link through the calendar link. I can probably do that. In fact, I know I can do that with the Calendly API. So I'm going to use the API info to send them a message. But if I want to send them a message, that's a confirmation message, right? So if I'm sending a confirmation message, it makes sense for me to know, at the very least, know their names. So name, I need their numbers so I can send the WhatsApp message. And I think it makes sense for me to know the exact date. And this part is funny because it will be, as you're going to see, trickier than you might guess. I know this because it's not the first Calendly integration that we're doing here. What I also like to do is just sketch how a message would be. Most likely it's not going to be like as raw as this one, but it's going to be something like, hey, name. Okay, so this is very simple sketch. Hey, name. Whenever I write something like in here, like name, like this just means that this is a dynamic field. So it's going to grab the name from this part over here. Hey, name, this message is to confirm our meeting scheduled for date. So it's going to grab the date in here. Okay, of course, this is a terrible message, but this is just so I like to write this message, because a lot of times whenever I'm writing it, I realize that I actually need to have more information than I thought I would. But it seems to be okay in here. What I also already noticed is that this is the start of a specific flow. So in here, I start a flow. For those of you that have already used like ManyChat or whatever chatbot software, that a flow is just a specific set of messages or a specific programming of messages. So the logic in this case would be something like, oh crap, I zoomed in. Let me call this flow 1. So if Calendly scheduled, send flow number 1. Okay, so right after this, I do need a conditional probably, because I need to understand in here, did they confirm it? So did they say okay or not? So I'm going to use conditional logic. So conditional, that is very common in any chatbot software as well. We're going to go through the technical part, but really this is simple, guys. You should know, or if you don't know, pause this video right now, search for conditional logic in like ManyChat, for example, which tends to be the most common one, and check it out because it's going to be vital that you know what this is. I also really like to draw what the conditional is going to look like. So if I'm checking to see if they confirmed, so if answer contains, then we can have a lot of different options. Okay, yes, fine, okay, written like this. Because remember, these are two different things. Okay, written like this, two different strings. Sure. We're going to have a video just on conditional logic, but it's very important that you realize that you have to put everything in here that might lead to a confirmation on the client part. Okay. These are the ones that I can think about right now. So if the answer contains any of these, and in the video, I'm going to make sure that I explain this, but contains is very different from is. Right? Most likely the answer that you're going to get is not going to be exactly yes or okay. It's going to be, yeah, sure, sounds good. Actually, sounds good is let me write good in here. Why don't I need to write sounds good? Because sounds good contains good. So good is one that I can leave in here. It's already going to suffice. So if the answer contains any of this, again, I'm just going to sketch it. Something here. Perfect. Talk to you soon. And also notify client. I could also in here switch the CRM column, but the client didn't specify this need. So contrary to popular belief, don't be creating things that were not requested at first. This is definitely something I'm going to ask the client. If they want to, I can definitely, whenever they confirm it, we just switch that from, let's say, scheduled a call to confirmed call. But I'm going to leave it like this for now. Now, if the answer is not this, so in programming terms, it would say else. So if this is not the case, so if the answer does not contain this terms in here, well, we can do one of two things. We can just consider that they answered negatively, or we can call, yeah, I think it's better we call the AI in order to analyze the answer. Yep. So for this case in here, I'm not going to use a system API, for example. It's a little bit too much. It's just a simple verification. So I need to prompt this. So prompt specific. This just means that it's going to have a specific prompt for this specific step. It's not going to be a general prompt. We're going to go through that later on. From here, it understands the answer. It also stores it or records it. This is going to be done through a Google Sheets. Then it's just going to acknowledge it. It's going to notify the client. I could even this notification that it sends to the client, put this part in here. So the answer that the customer gave. But again, I'm not going to create unnecessary complications now. And I think that's the end for this part, right? Now, let's go back up top to make sure that we got that right. So if they scheduled, and I have to grab that information with the Calendly API, it's going to send a WhatsApp message to confirm that. If they accept it, notify, and that's it. If they deny it, it's going to acknowledge, but it's also going to understand what happened, notify the client. Oh, we need to send a new link. Forgot about that. So acknowledge plus new link. Send. This is a new link from Calendly. So let's go back up here. So the second part is if they didn't schedule anything. So we just have, we still have their information. Because in here, look, we have their phone, we have their name, and we have their email, but we don't have anything else because they didn't schedule anything. We're still going to be sending a WhatsApp message to confirm that they subscribed. And we have to try to get them to schedule. All right, so let's draw this on the left. So everything's the same. Let me just, so didn't schedule on the landing page. First of all, we need to think about how we're going to get their information and set up that automation, since now we're not relying on the Calendly API. So we need another way to trigger that automation that's going to grab the number and fire up that WhatsApp message. I know for a fact that I can do that with Trello using the API. So Trello API. And the trigger is going to be, as I already know, I'm going to take notes in here. So trigger when new card is created on column X. So whenever there's a new card, and again, the card came from here, they filled the form on HubSpot. That form had their name, phone, and email. They were sent to Trello. That was sent as a card Trello. So the card has their name, phone, and email. And that was sent to Trello on a specific column, which I named in here column number 1. So let me go back here. And in here I can say column number 1. Try to erase this. Created on column 1. Okay, so here I already know what I have to do. So I'm going to set up the automation that triggers when a new card is created on column number 1. This automation is going to send a WhatsApp message. And again, I would like to think about what do I want this message to look like. So this is a simple example of what a message could be like. Again, this is terrible. Don't ever send a message like this, but this is just so I can deliberately think about the message to see if there's any information here that I need apart from what I already have. Hey name, I saw you just subscribing to our website to grow your company. Is that right? Okay. Again, I would never send this message. I much rather prefer asking the client to see what messages they already sent. I should have mentioned that before, because usually the client already has a flow of messages that are being sent. But anyway, okay, it sends the confirmation message. What else? Let me go back to the map. If we could even call this a map. Okay, so you should try to get them to schedule, understand objections, and overcome them. How can I do that? Now I have to be creative. And I say I have to be creative because not only do I have to do this to try to get them to schedule, but I have to do this on the most efficient, both from a cost and a time standpoint, but also from a stability standpoint, because I need to make sure that the system is stable. And that is always a challenge. But I have an idea for this one. When I talked to the client, he sent me some of the messages he already sends people. And that is actually a great hook for me to use. One of them. It's not exactly this message, but I want you to think through it with me. It's something like, okay, so I actually remembered that if the person did not schedule right away, I did talk to them over the initial calls that instead of just sending another link, since they already didn't schedule when they saw the first one, we should actually just hint them to check if they have an actual interest in having the discovery call. For that, the message is going to be somewhat like, we still have some spots open for the next few days, and it will be a pleasure to get to know more about your business. Can I ask the team what the next available time would be? So it's a different approach than just, hey, can I send you a link for your schedule? And once, okay, so we have to have a conditional. Actually, hold up. We need to have this doesn't lead immediately to this. We need to have a conditional in here. I forgot about that. So I'm just going to call it a positive conditional. I'm not going to write the whole thing because the idea is going to be exactly the same as we have in here. Okay, if answer contains okay, yes, fine, okay, sure, good, then we consider this a positive answer, positive conditional. If we have that, then we're going to be sending this. So let me go ahead and erase this. And we're going to have another positive conditional. And if they pass, let's say, through this conditional, we're going to acknowledge, and we're going to notify the team. Okay, now I'm looking at the other option here. If they say, okay, that was not me, or something like that. But for this specific case, I think it's very unlikely for anyone to deny. And also from experience, I know people don't tend to deny that they signed up. So I'm just going to add in here a negative conditional that if it fails, say sorry and notify client. I want to notify the client because maybe they wrote something on a weird way or something like that. So if it fails, so if they don't confirm that was them, we're just going to acknowledge that and say sorry, notify the client. Again, this is very unlikely. That's why I wrote it in, I would say red, but this is actually orange. Okay, so now we have to deal with the other situation, which is in here. Whenever we send this message, if they have they answer positively, perfect. But if they don't, this one, as it's a little bit more complex, so we need to understand the objection, what it was, and try to overcome it. Now I'm going to call the assistant API. So if it's not, actually not if it's not, so we can erase this, and there's just going to be an else. So call assistant API. So it's going to call the assistant API. And again, as I'm calling an API, I have to have the assistant itself trained. So I'm just going to write train. And the training has to be something like, okay, so we have to have the document of objections. I'm just going to write objections solver. And this document needs to have common objections and the answers for them. This is going to act as a guideline. This is all wrapped up in one node, if I can call it that. Let me go back and look at the system. Okay, and in here, I'm going to have a conditional. And this conditional is, because this is a little bit more advanced, but I'm going to train this assistant to, whenever the assistant feels or understands, I should say feels, it's weird to say that about an AI. Whenever she understands that the prospect allowed her to send a Calendly link or is interested in scheduling the call, she should send the link. So if the message contains an Calendly link, so I'm just going to write link in here. Then I pause the assistant because she has already fulfilled her objective. Now what happens then? Okay, pause the assistant. And from here, I'm going to consider she did what she was supposed to do. So notify client, and they take it from there. I'm going to write in here, notify client of success. So it's a custom notification like, hey, we're able to overcome an objection, and we just sent the link. And the reason why I have this condition on here is because if she already sent the link, she already succeeded in what she was supposed to be doing. So I don't need her to keep interacting with the prospect. And if AI understands they are not interested, then it should also notify client, and it also ends. I believe that we should be done with this first part, but I guarantee that as we create this, we're going to be adapting some things, changing some things. So let's go back to the original drawing. If they don't schedule, it should confirm the subscription and try to get them to schedule. Overcome the objections, capture the objections, or forget about this part. If it can't, then acknowledge and ends. Okay, so let me go back in here because I forgot about. Okay, but it's going to be a little bit trickier to really capture what the objection was. How can I do that? Well, this video is long enough as it is right now. So I'm going to add just a side note here that it needs to grab this info. But as I don't already know how to solve this, what I usually do is I just draw something that's very eye-catching, if I can put it that way, like this. So I need to grab this info. So now I know, because there is this ugly little thing in here, that I have to solve something in here. So for those wondering, for me to create all of this, I don't know how long the video is right now, but actually let me zoom out even more. For all of this, which would be completely normal, see, like when I say that this really catches your attention, this really does. Like you can really see this little part in here. But anyway, this was a 1 hour and 42 session. Let's see, I'm sorry, 1 hour and 32 session. 1 hour and 33 now. Let's see, obviously it's going to be way less in the video itself, but to go through this whole thing in here, it took me 1 hour and 30 minutes, like 1 hour and a half. And I want you guys to understand, like, I took 1 hour and a half to do this, and I've done this a dozen times, like multiple dozens of times. So a lot of you believe that this is like simple work, that you're just going to outsource somebody to somebody, and then they're going to just give you the whole thing beautifully done and so forth. I would love this to be true. In my experience and the experience of most of my peers, this is completely false. Most likely you are going to be taking considerably more than 1 hour and 30 minutes to get your thoughts together, just to be able to put some drawings on what your system is going to look like. But once you have something like this, now your thought is systematized, and it's way easier for you to build this technically. Okay, you're going to see that the technical part is actually pretty simple. Of course, by simple, I don't mean easy. By simple, I don't mean fast, but it's simple. I hope this first part was clear enough, even though it's long. And I'll see you again very soon.